First, our magazine for the deaf and hard of hearing. See here.
In a while, we'll be hearing about how to stay safe if your car breaks down. But today's programme begins with a major report from Jack Ashley on hearing aids. It starts with a group of hearing aid users telling us about their experiences.
I think it would take someone 2 to 3 months to get used to living with a hearing aid. It'll affect different people in different ways, but I would think that's about an average time.
First time I went to the bathroom, I couldn't believe it. It was like Niagara Falls. I mean, when I was flushing the toilet, you know, the noise was tremendous. But I've been told that it's just normal.
Remember in nursery before I had them, it was a bit hard to hear. When I went straight to school, because I had my hearing aid, it was good to hear my friends.
You need to wear them because they're good for you. They can make you hear better.
A lot of people are too embarrassed to wear them because it's not exactly the same as getting a pair of glasses. You know, with hearing aids, a lot of people don't understand, they don't associate with young people. They think with hearing aids becomes with old age.
A hearing aid is very important to me. I wouldn't be able to do my job if I didn't have one.
There are over 7 million people in this country with some degree of hearing loss. And of those, some 2.5 million have hearing aids. But no less than a quarter of those 2.5 million aids end up gathering dust in drawers. Now, in this programme, we want to find out why people are dissatisfied and what they can do to get the best out of their hearing aids.
If you're new to a hearing aid, it really hits you hard, just the level of the noise and the fact that you cannot hear the voice through the noise, so that if you're not taught how to use your aid, then you will very quickly want to put it away.
Well, hearing aids can help, but of course they can't restore hearing completely. And often they fall below expectation. I think this is partly because they amplify all sounds and not just the sounds people want to hear. The National Health Service provides hearing aids free, usually from a standard range, although exceptionally they can provide commercial aids. But 1 in 5 people choose to go to the private sector, mainly because there are no queues, a variety of models and local service. On the other hand, some people believe there's absolutely no need to go private. Chad Donaldson is the editor of No Need to Shout, and he believes passionately that the National Health Service can provide the right hearing aid for people. There's no guarantee that paying for an aid will get you the right one for your needs.
I've been wearing a hearing aid since I was 4 years old, which I'm afraid to say is 35 years. I've probably had about a dozen different hearing aids, lived in 9 or 10 different towns, tried lots of different hospitals, so I'm fairly experienced in the use of hearing aids. I've once been persuaded to try private, which I wasn't very happy about. And really today I want to talk about how good the National Health Service can be in giving you a hearing aid. Don't feel embarrassed about wearing a hearing aid. They're wonderful little machines which can really help you live your life to the full. If there's any special kind of hearing aid you need, the National Health Service can get it for you. Feel proud about wearing a hearing aid and don't feel that you have to go private.
So we asked Shaz to come up with some solutions. He went back to his local audiology unit in Glasgow.
But why do so many hearing aids end up in a drawer, not being used? Let's see if we can find out. Is it because your expectations are too high and you expect a hearing aid to replace your hearing? Is it because you find the hearing aid painful or uncomfortable to wear? Or maybe it's because you just can't get the thing to work properly. Or you don't like the way it looks. You may not think you can find answers to these questions without spending a lot of money, but we can.
Shaz was provided free with a commercial hearing aid, not one from the standard National Health Service range. It was prescribed for him by audiologist Mary McEwen.
Mary, what if somebody needs a private hearing aid?
We're not restricted to use the hearing aids that are national health. If we have a patient with a particular problem that these aids aren't suitable for, we can go outside and buy a private hearing aid for them, and we do this a lot.
Now, a lot of people are going to be watching this are going to be very, very surprised at that. You can get them a private hearing aid through the National Health Service.
You have a certain amount of money and it just depends on how you decide to spend it. I would say that if somebody goes along to their local audiology clinic and they aren't happy, then to complain or to see their general practitioner to see if they can be seen elsewhere. If they don't come out with a hearing aid that they are happy with, then they can always ask for a second opinion.
How do you see hearing aids developing in the future, Mary?
I think in the near future we'll be starting to go more for the in-the-ear type hearing aid. Unfortunately, they're not suitable for everybody. And obviously the more severe your hearing loss, the less likely chance that you're going to hear with one of these.
If you have a National Health clinic as good as this one is, there is no need to keep your hearing aid in a drawer. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you know, not all National Health establishments offer such a good service, so it is up to you to shop around.
It was just so uncomfortable. Honestly to say, I think that overcame the actual helping part of it. It was only when my hearing deteriorated further that I recognised that the need for it.
Getting the best aid through the National Health Service can be a hit and miss affair. But then so is finding help in learning how to use it, and that's crucial in the first few months. Only the lucky few will be referred to a hearing therapist.
When you've first been issued with a hearing aid, if you've never had one before, the advice that we always give patients is don't wear it as you walk out of the hospital, because the traffic noise is going to be horrendous and it's going to be very frightening. A hearing therapist is basically somebody who helps you to rehabilitate, to adjust to life with a hearing aid, and also somebody who helps people have certain hearing problems that can't be helped with a hearing aid. And this is where a hearing therapist comes in as well, helping with something called auditory training, lip reading, and learning something we call listening tactics. There are about 78 or 80 hearing therapists actually working at the moment. This is throughout the whole country. Ideally, every hospital that has an audiology department should have a hearing therapist. You would find it very strange if you went to hospital and you'd had a broken limb and they didn't offer you physiotherapy and coming to terms with things, but nobody thinks it's strange that you're offered a hearing aid and nobody to help you with that. And the reason there aren't enough hearing therapists is probably because a lot of hospitals don't know that they exist, and also there is the old question of where does the money come from?
I was with a hearing therapist for about an hour the first time I came, and I just couldn't believe it because it was really wonderful. I was able to tell her all the various things that had troubled me before, which I didn't have time to tell the consultant.
Historically, anything to do with hearing has always been the poor relation. It's the unseen disability, therefore, just get on with it.
Some people volunteer to fill the gaps left by the patchy provision in the health service, and Morag McGarren works in a deaf club in Glasgow, and she set up a volunteer support group who visit people who have been fitted with hearing aids.
This involves training volunteers by an audiologist and also by myself to be able to go out to people's homes, say 2 weeks after they've received their new hearing aid, to go out to their homes where it's a relaxed atmosphere, not in a hospital, to give them information on their hearing aid, advice about batteries, where to get them, tubing, how to clean your mould, and also information that people don't hear normally from the hospital.
When there's little or no support for people in parts of the country, it's not surprising to see them move into the open arms of the private sector. Consumers are faced with a tempting choice of expensive hearing aids. It's extremely difficult to get independent advice about which aid is most suitable, and it's a costly mistake if one of these ends up in the drawer. 20% of hearing aids are dispensed privately, and although the great majority of dispensers do a good job, some don't, and protests have been made in Parliament about the methods used. The trouble is, some firms sell hearing aids rather like double glazing. They want to sell as many as they can and make as much money as they can. But dispensing hearing aids should always be a professional and a caring job. I talked to Jackie Blount, a member of the Hearing Aid Council, which regulates the hearing aid industry. Recent legislation has given consumers a more powerful role on the council.
Since the Amendment Act was passed and the balance of the council has changed to 4 members of the consumers, 4 from audiologists and 4 from dispensers, the balance has meant that we've been able more to concentrate on the rights and the issues around the consumers.
What do you think of the invasion of people's homes by forceful salesmen?
This is one of the issues that the council is looking at the moment in amending the Code of Practice. I think it's very difficult to look at this in a balanced way. I think it's very hard for people who are having people knocking on their doors not to feel intimidated by that.
Well, what is the council doing about that?
Thinking about putting on every piece of information that the existence of the Hearing Aid Council, and for people to be able to get in contact with us.
Thank you. 5 years ago, when I was an MP, a minister wrote to me saying that a hearing aid, contrary to popular belief, doesn't restore the wearer's hearing to a normal level. Now, that comment by John Major, when he was Minister for Disabled People, was probably correct. But the aid is even less likely to be helpful if it is prescribed by an unprofessional dispenser. So we shall await this new Code of Practice with great interest. And when it's published, this programme, See Here, will give you a full report on it. Meanwhile, if people are unhappy with their hearing aids, they should go back to the person who prescribed them, either in the health service or in the private sector. They may not have the right aid or the right support to use the aid properly. And from there, they should take steps to use their hearing aid properly and ensure that they don't end up gathering dust in drawers.
Thanks, Jack. I'd just like to emphasise how important it is to go back to your supplier if you're not satisfied with your aid. Remember, if you are buying a private aid, particularly in your own home, that you have the same consumer right as anyone who buys from a salesman. The December edition of See Here magazine has a feature on how the consumer laws can protect you. And both the RNID and BAHO publish leaflets to help guide you in choosing carefully. Their addresses are at the end of the programme. Recently there have been reports on television and in the press about how lone women motorists were attacked when waiting at traffic lights in broad daylight or when their cars broke down on the motorway. We received a letter from Jane Walton of Bradford. Since reading and hearing about 2 women being stopped, thinking their car was faulty, by 3 men, and then being raped, it just got me mad, which prompted me to write to See Here. And she goes on, I feel someone ought to be on the programme aiming at women's safety, and what precautions we should talk about and so on. 1 in 5 women hates driving at night for fear of breaking down and being open to attack. Almost 90% said their biggest fear was simply breaking down at night in a remote area where they could not get help. Deaf women do not have access to information about safety. Hello, both of you.
Hello.
With me in this studio are Sheila Wombwell from Middlesex and a policeman, Mark Chaplin. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, now Sheila, tell me about your experience. You had a bad experience with the car, didn't you?
Well, yes, I was driving along on the A40 when the car broke down. And I had to get out, and there was lots of traffic around. I was very heavily pregnant at the time. And I walked along to try and find a phone box, and then I realised I hadn't brought the minicom. So I carried on walking until I found a taxi. And the taxi dropped me off at home, and I really felt sick. I mean, I was so nervous about everything. My husband came back and asked me where the car was, and I told him I had to leave it on the A40. It wasn't safe to stay there until night, so I was too scared.
Right, so that must have been really frightening. Now, Mark, what advice would you give to Sheila if it happens again in the future? Well, if you'd like to get in the car, Sheila, I'll explain it to you.
Okay.
Okay, now if you feel your car's going to stop, it's breaking down, move over as far as you can to the left of the road, on the hard shoulder if you can. Stop, put the handbrake on, switch on your hazard warning flashes. Now, it's important to think of your personal safety. Now, if you have one of those red triangles, you need to set it up behind the car about 30 yards back. So you need to go back and do that, remembering to be careful. And make sure you get out on the near side of the car to walk back, because the traffic's coming on your right-hand side, so that's dangerous.
Right.
Now, you ought to have a couple of pieces of paper in the car as well, and a pen. So if you see a car stopping, write down the number of that car and then hide it somewhere. So if there's any trouble later, you've got the number of the car, you can get to the police. And on the other piece of paper, write down your car number, the make of your car, and your membership number if you're a member of the RAC or the AA. And then when the person comes up, just hold it up to the glass so they can see it.
So let's say someone comes up then, but I'm not sure whether they're police or not. I mean, what should I do?
If you're not very sure, stay in your car, lock the doors, make sure your windows are wound up. Now, if it's a uniform, ask if you can see the warrant card. If it's a plainclothes person, stay in your car. Don't get out whatever you do.
Right.
Okay, Mark. Now, that was the A40. Is it the same on a motorway, or is there a difference in what you should do? Well, the police advise that on motorways there's a little bit of difference. There's an emergency telephone every mile along a motorway. So try and coast to a phone, get as near to one as you possibly can, and get out again on the near side to make your phone call. Now, if you're deaf, keep tapping the receiver like this, and the police will know that there's a person there. And then they send a police car to come and find you. Now, while you're waiting, you can get out of the car and go up the banking a little, and you can see your car, keep an eye on it. If you see a car coming to stop, then get back into your car quickly and lock the doors again. Okay, now what if someone like Sheila is frightened to get out of the car? Yeah, I mean, you've said they should tap the phone if they're deaf, but suppose you're too frightened to get out, what can you do then?
I'd much rather stay in the car. I feel much safer. I wouldn't get out.
Well, we have a safety poster here that you can get.
But where do I get these from?
Well, you can get them from Vauxhall sales rooms, garages. So what you do is you stick that on the inside of your back window, so drivers coming by can see it. If you have a Minicom, you can use your Minicom now with portable telephones. Right. Okay, thank you very much, both of you. So it's obviously important to make sure you get the phone call done if you can and do that right. Now, there are three main motoring organisations. There's the AA, the RAC and the National Breakdown Service. They all have free telephone lines which are accessible by Minicom on any phone at all. But there is an alternative. This is the AA call safe. Now, this is designed to help stranded motorists to phone the AA or emergency services. But you can't use it as an ordinary phone to phone your family or friends, so it's actually quite expensive. On the other hand, because of the recession, portable telephones are actually getting quite cheap. And if you can afford one, you of course can use it with a Minicom to access anyone, just make a phone call. And you can also use Type Talk. Now here's Carol Lee.
Last week we had a disturbing letter from Muriel Forsyth in Newcastle, who is deaf. She told us she had won the Daily Mirror bingo competition, but to claim she had to phone in. She told us, "I got to the phone quickly. I got through and had an awful time trying to explain I was deaf, and was it possible for someone to call and check my coupon? The man or woman on the other end kept putting the phone down. I wasted £3.50 on calls as I was on my own. At last I found a lady to phone for me and was told it had just been won. My point is that if I had been able to hear, I would have won £10,000. What a shame." And recently Beryl Bufton of Nuneaton wrote in with a similar complaint about the Today newspaper. She even sent us her bingo card with a winning £1,000 line on it. See Here had to take up their complaints, so I faxed a letter to Fleet Street explaining the situation and asking for a response. First, the Daily Mirror. Andrew Gerbhardt, the marketing manager, told us,
"We get several phone calls a day from people who think they have won. If you do have a hearing disability, please organise help in advance to register a claim if you think you're getting near to a win."
"So what do they expect? We have our social worker on standby?" Richard Davis from the Mirror phoned to add,
You are presumably aware that the BBC do many phoning competitions such as Noel Edmonds, etc. Do they have Minicoms?
"We are working on that one, Mr. Davis. The Mirror did say that they would investigate Muriel's claim, and were keen to think of ways of how they could help." The Today newspaper was more constructive. we had a friendly letter from executive editor David Nicholson, who confessed he had never heard of a Minicom, but said, "This sounds like a piece of equipment we should be using." He went on,
Thanks to your prompting, I will attempt to ensure that our deaf readers are more carefully considered in future.
Mr. Nicholson also offered charitable funds for help with access. We shall be letting the major charities know of his offer. As a follow-up, another of the Today's executive editors faxed us and said,
We will urgently look into the possibility of organising a fax number for readers who have difficulties using the phone.
the possibility of real progress. So I put the same points to the rest of the popular press and magazines. The Sun didn't take the trouble to reply, and the Daily Mail had no comment. The Express said they were sorry about it, but went on to say,
We have to cater for the vast majority. Out of all the competitions that we run in our newspapers each week, normally only a couple of competitions are phone-in. The rest are postal.
IPC magazines publish most of the popular women's titles. They knew about the problem and have had letters about it before. They sent us a fax saying,
Wherever possible, we offer a postal option to our competitions. Indeed, many competitions are postal entry only.
IPC ended by suggesting,
I understand that deaf people using the relay service offered by TypeTalk can contact a third party to make the telephone call on their behalf, and could in this way enter our competitions and make use of our telephone services.
TypeTalk would be able to help with bingo claiming, but it isn't ideal for phone-in competitions, as there isn't time for the operator to relay questions and answers by text phone. TypeTalk say that you will probably have to pay for more than one call to get it all down. So the situation looks bleak. We will still have to depend on friends and family to join in competitions and to claim our winnings. We'll keep trying on this one. If you have a story you'd like us to investigate, get in touch with See Here.
That's all, but remember there's only a month to go before the closing date of our drama competition. Get writing. We're after a brief summary of your idea for a play based on deaf culture. Not more than 3 or 4 pages or a 10-minute video letter. The winning play will be for production next Christmas, 1993. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.